the FBI and an MSNBC national security analyst. And Chuck Rosenberg is an MSNBC contributor, a former U.S. attorney and senior FBI official. Frank, let me read for you a part of the former president's statement just released yesterday evening. He wrote this: all the Democrats want to do is put people in jail. They are vicious, violent, and radical left thugs. They don't think they'll be held accountable for rigging the 2020 presidential election. The January 6th Unselect Committee is a cover-up for what took place on November 3rd, and the people of our country will not stand for it. Your response, Frank, on Twitter was tick-tock. Expand on that for me. What do you mean?
I don't think the former president hides his emotions very well at all. And I think typically, historically for him, when he sends out something like this, it's indicative that he's learned something that we don't know. Do I have any special behind-the-scenes information on that? No. But this sounds to me, with his targeting of Democratic AGs and DAs, district attorneys, something's stirring. Word has gotten to him that something's about to happen. He doesn't like where investigations are going. He's lashing out. Expect to see more of this as they get closer and closer to the possibility that either the state of New York and or the Manhattan District Attorney's Office and or the DOJ is getting closer to him. Some word's gotten back to him that triggered that message.
So you think this may be a result possibly of even the text messages that were revealed earlier this week, especially from Liz Cheney?
Oh, I think specifically, it's my belief that DOJ and the Select Committee are not working in a vacuum. For those all over social media who are understandably frustrated with timing and wonder if DOJ and Merrick Garland and FBI are doing absolutely nothing, I'm an evidence guy, so I see glimpses in the evidence we've seen, and we get glimpses that not only is DOJ not doing nothing, but rather that they understand the role of the Select Committee. We've seen DOJ and the White House waive executive privilege. We've seen people cooperating at a fairly high level. We've seen even this week a guy by the name of Straka, an arrested defendant in the January 6th case. What did DOJ do? They put the brakes on his proceedings because he spoke at the rally. He's been arrested. And he's cooperating. Enough cooperation for DOJ to stop what they're doing with Straka. We know other oath keepers are cooperating. We know through an FBI interview report that a high-ranking oath keeper was asked this question by FBI agents: were you in contact with members of Congress or their staff? We've heard Chairman Benny Thompson from the Select Committee tell reporters in the last 2 weeks about who authored the text being released by the committee. Yeah. He said House members and staffers, the same language the FBI is using when they question oath keepers. I think things are happening. I think Merrick Garland understands domestic terrorism. He prosecuted and helped prosecute the largest domestic terrorism case in the United States, the Oklahoma City bombing. I think he knows what he's doing.
Chuck, let's talk about culpability here when it comes to the former president. There was a New York Magazine article called The Great Escape talking about the former president's culpability and how he's been able to evade authorities, I should say, or culpability up until now. Specifically talking also about his call with Georgia's Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger. I want to play a portion of that phone call just to remind folks of it.
So, look, all I want to do is this. I just want to find 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have, because we won the state, and flipping the state is a great testament to our country.
Chuck, I think the major question here is, was that breaking the law by calling the Georgia Secretary of State and asking him to find votes? And if so, why has he not been charged?
Well, like Frank, and I'm sure like Barb, I'm also an evidence guy. That phone call is evidence of a crime, but it's not conclusive evidence of a crime, Yasmin. It could be that the president was so deluded, that he actually thinks he won Georgia. If he actually thinks he won Georgia, then asking the Secretary of State in Georgia to find the votes that he thinks belongs to him would not be evidence of a crime. It would be evidence of his delusion. That's precisely why you do investigations, in order to establish the hardest thing in these criminal cases, intent. What did the president know, to sort of use and borrow an old phrase, and when did he know it? And so the reason these investigations take time is that there's an easy part and a hard part. The easy part is having the phone call. The hard part is demonstrating what it is the president actually knew, what he actually intended. Could you have a crime in Georgia? Absolutely. Do you have a conclusive crime? Do you have conclusive proof with that phone call? No, not yet.
Barbara, let's talk about a possible investigation of the DOJ into the former president. I actually touched on this a little bit with New York Times reporter Katie Benner a little bit earlier, Justice Department reporter for the New York Times, and talking about the thinking behind the scenes there. What do you make of this? Do you believe the Justice Department should be launching an investigation into the former president? And is there a possibility it's already going and we just don't know about it?
I think there's absolutely adequate predication to be investigating President Trump, and there are a number of avenues that could be used for that purpose. Number one is, and we heard Michael Sherwin, the acting U.S. attorney in the District of Columbia, way back in the aftermath of January 6th, saying that they were going to investigate everybody who had anything to do with this, even up to the highest levels, to include sedition and insurrection and other crimes. So it could very well be that the cases we're already seeing, the 600-some cases, are just the lower-level cases that will build to the higher levels. So it's possible it's already occurring through that avenue. Grand jury investigations are, by definition, secret, so it could very well be that there are other investigations that are occurring that we don't know about. There's a third possibility, and that is that the Justice Department is allowing Congress to do some of the heavy lifting here, bringing in some of these witnesses and getting these privileges and other issues worked out so that if and when this committee has to disband at the time of the midterms, all of that is still evidence that the Justice Department could use to bring its own charges. So I think there are multiple ways that there could be investigations swirling all around right now.
So if, in fact, this committee has to disband at the midterms, that doesn't mean necessarily that their work stops. The Justice Department at that point can pick it up and run with it if, in fact, they feel like that's what's warranted.
Absolutely. You know, and it may very well be they're already doing that or they're already working in parallel, as Frank has suggested. But at the very least, if this committee were disbanded, they could share all of these transcripts and all of the things they've put together in the case with the Justice Department for them to pick up the ball and carry it.
Frank, what about all the people that surrounded the former president in the lead up to January 6th, the folks that enabled the election lie that we are learning about every single day, whether it be Jim Jordan, whether it be Congressman Scott Perry of Pennsylvania, Gosar, Biggs, Gohmert, Meadows, obviously, as well. What about investigations launched into them? Could there be subsequent investigations either launched by the Justice Department and or the FBI, as Barbara was just speaking to, that we don't necessarily know about to hold these people accountable?
Not only do I think it's possible, I think it may be happening. And again, I refer back to the little clues we're getting. The fact that an FBI agent asked a senior oath keeper if he's been in contact with Congress or staffers regarding the January 6th breach, that's not, FBI agents don't come up with questions off the top of their head in a nationwide complex investigations. The questions are drafted by intelligence analysts. They're collection requirements. They're put out in templates to all agents. I think the FBI is looking at the involvement of Congress members and staff, and I think that's already happening.
Hey, Chuck, final word to you quickly here. Is there a sense at all that possibly the Justice Department doesn't want to get as involved with an investigation into the former president because they see it as too political at this moment?
You know, it's such an interesting question, Yasmin. I think it's a mistake for those at the Justice Department to go too easy or too hard based on someone's status or the fact that they held office. You got to take it right down the middle. You have to play it down the middle. And so my hope is that they do an investigation, a thorough, thoughtful investigation. They follow the facts. They apply the law. You know, it is a hard call as to whether or not you charge someone like Donald Trump, because you also have to have a reasonable probability of conviction, meaning not just enough to charge, but enough to convict. And as we were speaking about earlier, Yasmin, when part of the conviction is predicated on proving intent, that's hard. So I don't mind that the Justice Department is being careful. Like Barb and like Frank, I sure hope they're doing an investigation.
I always love talking to you guys. I always learn so much, as our audience does as well. So for that, Barbara, Frank, Chuck, I'm going to ask you to stick around because we have more to come in this special, including Fox News hosts January 6 texts that are telling a very different story from their on-air comments. That's next.